Okay, well, welcome back to PALS TV, everyone. We're happy to be here again with you today. Obviously, we've been running into some technical difficulties here and there, so work with us through that. If you wanted to go back and watch the intro video, you can find it on our website underneath the PALS TV schedule. So we love bringing you all kinds of different programs and segments here on PALS TV. Today will be no different. We have a wonderful lineup in store for you, starting our day out in Steubenville with a new travel segment with Amanda, and then heading over to Heath for some fun with Together We Grow Gardening. They've been great partners, so we really appreciate them coming on here and doing that. And then some fitness fun with Shelly, which last week was a blast. This week will be no different. Then always love our weekly cooking lessons with Chef Bill in his kitchen. And then finishing our day, heading over to Outside the Lines and playing some games. So great lineup, looking forward to it. Should be a lot of fun. But first, we'll be heading over to Steubenville, Ohio, and joining Amanda again, as she's been doing the travel, recreation, and leisure segment with us. Different tours. We started out with Smithsonian, headed over to the Air Force Museum. She's done a fantastic job with teaching us new things throughout our history and different aspects of our society today. So we can't thank her enough for giving us those insights. So first off today, heading over to Steubenville, Ohio with Amanda. So thanks, Amanda.
Hi, everybody. Good to see everyone again. All right, so today we are going to head to the Ford Theater, and that is in Washington, D.C. Does anybody know what happened at the Ford Theater in Washington, D.C.? So at the Ford Theater in Washington, D.C., that was where President Lincoln was assassinated. So we're going to tour the theater. We're going to learn a little bit about it. We're going to read a letter from a person who was an eyewitness there. So an eyewitness is somebody who was there, saw it firsthand. It didn't come secondhand, third hand, anything sort of like that. So on April 14th, 1865, President Lincoln and his wife Mary attended a show at Ford's Theater called Our American Cousin. They did not know that a man named John Wilkes Booth, a well-known actor who supported the Confederacy, was furious that the Union was about to win the Civil War, was plotting Lincoln's assassination. An assassination is when someone is murdered for political reasons. John Wilkes Booth strongly disagreed with President Lincoln's political views. So that was his reasoning why he did it. So I have a letter here, and this letter, see it right here? This letter right here is from Julia Adelaide Shepard, and she was in attendance at Ford Theater on April 14th, 1865. And she wrote to her father on the 16th, so 2 days later, recounting the Lincoln assassination. It was printed in the Century Illustrated Monthly Magazine, volume 77. Okay, so at the time she lived in Ogdensburg, New York. So just a little bit about her. So we are going to, so right there, oh, let me share my screen, darlings. Let me add these folks. Okay, share. All right, if you can see my screen, give me a thumbs up. Okay, good. Everyone can see my screen. Okay, so right in here, this is the Ford Theater. It's restored to look almost exactly as it did the night of April 14th, 1865. That night, John Wilkes Booth, a racist Confederate sympathizer, assassinated President Abraham Lincoln. So they haven't done a whole lot to the theater since then, because it's a historical site, so they have to keep it, you know, looking very much the same as what it did back then. So you can see the theater over here. This would have been the presidential box where it occurred. Okay, and just another view. It says, when managers at Ford Theater learned Lincoln would attend the performance of Our American Cousin, they decorated one of the expensive boxes, this one right here, that overlooked the stage. The draped flags and lithograph of George Washington helped make it presidential for the evening. And I'll zoom in a little bit more so we can see the picture of George Washington. We can see the box up here and the wallpaper. And so our next part, today the theater holds 665 people in modern seats. On the night of the assassination, more than 1,700 people sat in portable wooden chairs. It was advertised that Lincoln and General Ulysses S. Grant would be there, and the house was full. So everyone was trying to see the president and Ulysses S. Grant. So obviously they've put in new chairs since the since the chairs at that time would have been folding chairs. So the third level, called the family circle, have branches to hold as many people as possible. Seats here only cost 25 cents compared to 75 cents in the orchestra and 50 cents in the dress circle. Today, this level is used to support modern theater technology. So up here, this would have been the cheapest seats in the house, but now as you see, you've got all your equipment and things of that sort up here, and you can see the box from right here. The Lincolns arrived at the theater late that night around 8:30, walking up from the lobby into the presidential box through the second level known as the dress circle. Today, this level contains a bust of Lincoln that commemorates his life. So right there's the bust of Lincoln. And we'll spin around and you can see what it would have looked like up here. And he would have gone through this door right here to get over into his box where he was sitting. Although the theater was full, only a few people noticed Booth walk through the dress circle towards the box late in the third act. Those who did not notice him would have been surprised to see such a prominent actor walking through the theater. So everyone was so enraptured with the play and the fact that Lincoln was there that they didn't even pay any mind to the guy who was creeping around in the back. So the Lincolns were now in the booth. We're in the presidential booth where it happened. The Lincolns and their guests, Major Henry Rathbone and his fiancée, Clara Harris, were seated in this box. The box was furnished from items from the theater manager's office, specifically for the presidential party. So we see the wallpaper, you got the sconces up there, there's the chairs, and if you can see, it's got a pretty good view of the stage. So, and here's a picture that you know, an artist rendered. Just after 10 p.m., Booth entered the box and waited until the play's biggest laugh to fire a single-shot Derringer pistol behind the president's ear. This lithograph depicts the moment Booth shot Lincoln. So down here we have a caption: the assassination of President Lincoln at Ford's Theater, Washington, D.C., April 14th, 1865. I could not read. After Booth fatally shot Lincoln, he stabbed Major Rathbone, who tried to stop him before jumping to the stage. As he let Booth's spur nick the frame, if you zoom in to the edge of the frame, you can see the nick. So right here, whoops, my fault. So right here, if you can see that little nick right there, that would have been from Booth's spur when he jumped from the stage. So now, since we're in the box, I'm actually going to go back one where we have a better picture of the box. I'm going to go ahead and read the letter that I talked to you about earlier from Miss Julia Adelaide Shepherd. So, dear Father, it is Friday night and we are at the theater. Cousin Julia has just told me that the president is in yonder upper right-hand private box, so handsomely decked with silken flags, festooned over a picture of Washington. The young and lovely daughter of Senator Harris is the only one of the party we can see, as flags hid the rest. But we know that Father Abraham is here, like a father watching what interests his children for their pleasure rather than his own. It has been announced in the papers that he would be there. How sociable it seems, like one family sitting around their parlor fire. How different is this from the pomp and show of the monarchical Europe? Everyone has been so jubilant for days since the surrender of Lee. So when she says Lee, she's talking about the surrender of General Lee, who was part of the Confederate Army, that they laugh and shout at every clownish witticism. One of the actresses, whose part is that of a very delicate young lady, talks of wishing to avoid the draft when her lover tells not to be alarmed, for there is no more draft, at which the applause is long and loud. The American cousin has just been making love to a young lady who says she will never marry but for love. Yet when her mother and herself find he has lost his property, they retreat in disgust at the left of the stage, while the American cousin goes out the right. We are waiting for the next scene. The report of a pistol is heard. Is it all in the play? A man leaps from the president's box some 10 feet onto the stage. So now she's talking about the assassination. The truth flashes upon me. Brandishing a dagger, he shrieks out, "The South is avenged!" and rushes through the scenery. No one stirs. Did you hear what he said, Julia? I believe he has killed the president. Mrs. Harris is wringing her hands and calling for water. Another instant and the stage is crowded. Officers, policemen, actors, and citizens. Is there a surgeon in the house, they say? Several rush forward with superhuman efforts to climb up to the box. Minutes or hours, but see, they are bringing him out. A score of long arms bear Lincoln's loved form along. A glimpse of a ghastly face is all they pass along. Major Rathbone, who is in their party, springs forward to support Mr. Lincoln, but cannot. What is it? Yes, he is too has been stabbed. Somebody says, clear the house, so everyone repeats, yes, clear the house. When they talk about the house, they mean the theater. So slowly, one party after another steals out. There's no need to hurry. On the steps, we stop aghast and with shuddering lips. Yes, see, it is our president's blood. All down the stairs and out upon the pavement. It seems sacrilege to step near. We are in the street now. They have taken the president into the house opposite. He is alive but mortally wounded. What are those people saying? Secretary Seward and his son have had their throats cut in their own house. Is it so? Yes, and the murderer of our president has escaped through a back alley where a swift horse stood awaiting him. Cavalry come dashing up the street and stand with drawn swords before yon house. Too late, too late. What a mockery armed men are now. Weary with the weight of the woe, the moments drag along, and for hours delicate women stand clinging to the arms of their protectors, and strong men throw their arms around each other's necks and cry like children, and passing up and down inquire in a low, agonized voice, can he live? Is there no hope? They are putting out the street lamps now. What a shame. Not now, not tonight. They are lit again. Now the guard with the drawn sword forces the crowd backward. Great strong Cousin Ed says, this unnerves me. Let's go up to Cousin Joe's. We leave Julie and her escort there at Brother Joe's, gather together in an upper room and talk with Dr. Webb and his wife, who were at the theater. Dr. Webb was one of the surgeons who answered the call. He says, I asked Doctor when I went in what it was, and putting his hand on mine, he said, there. And I looked, and it was ghastly. After a while, Julia and Mr. W. came in and still talked and listened to the cavalry rushing through the echoing street. Joe was determined to go out, but his wife wouldn't endure the thought of anyone going out of the house. It was only in the early hours of dawn that the gentleman went to lie down. But Julia sat up in a rocking chair, and I lay down on the outside of the bed for Cousin Ginny for the rest of the night, while Cousin Joe and his wife's brother sat nodding in chairs opposite. There were rooms waiting for us, but it seemed safer to be together. He was still living when we came out to Hopeton, but we had scarcely choked down our breakfast next morning when the tolling bells announced the terrible truth. Last Thursday, we drove to the city, and all along our route, the city was a blaze of glorious light. From the humble cabin of contraband to the brilliant White House, light answered light down the broad avenue. The sky was ablaze with bursting rockets. Calcium lights shone from afar on the public buildings. Bonfires blazed in the streets, and every device that human Yankee ingenuity could suggest in the way of mottos and decoration made noon of midnight. Then as candles burned low and rockets ceased, we drove home through the balmy air, and it seemed as though heaven smiled upon the rejoicings, and nature took up the illumination with a glory of moonlight and transcended all art. Today I have been to church through the same streets and suburbs with the humble cottages that were so bright that night shone through the murky morning, heavy with black hangings, and on down the streets, only the blackness of darkness. The show of mourning was as universal as the glorying had been, and when we were surrounded by the solemn and awe-stricken congregation in the church, it seemed as though my heart had stopped beating. I feel like a frightened child. I wish I could go home and have a good cry. I can't bear to be alone. You will hear all of this from the papers, but I can't help writing it, for things seen are mightier than things heard. It seems hard to write now. I dare not speak of our dear great loss, sleeping or walking. That terrible scene is before me. Love, your daughter. So that was her letter she wrote to her father because she had been at the theater that night. And that was her firsthand account. So right here we have a little bit more about the theater. It says Booth fell onto the 12 feet onto the stage. He shouted, "Sic temper tyrannis," the motto of Virginian in Latin, thus always to tyrants. He ran across the stage and out the back door. The audience and actors, frozen in shock, did not stop him. Realizing Lincoln would not survive the journey back to the White House, doctors asked audience members to carry him outside. She talked about that in her letter. Artist Carol Burst sketched the scene from his porch on 10th Street and later turned it into a painting. So this would have been people leaving the theater. And you see right there, they're carrying the president. They're going to take him somewhere outside of the theater. And that place that they would have carried him from was the Peterson house. So audience members carried Lincoln's body to the Peterson's boarding house, just opposite the theater. They brought Lincoln to the back room, which was empty that night. Today, the street outside is paved. At the time of the assassination, it was mud. So it would have been a rainy, kind of crappy night when it happened. And they were trying to carry him through the crowd in the muddy streets to get to this house right here to hopefully give him some medical care. Mary Lincoln, she had fainted, unfortunately, but she came back to, and she initially remained with her unconscious husband. However, Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, horrified by her cries, ordered her to the front parlor. No pictures exist of the room, but it was at the time of the photo restored by the National Park Service to look as though it might have that night. So this is where they would have told his wife Mary to go into the parlor here, and this is between visits to her husband's bedside. Mary Lincoln waited in this parlor with her son Robert and friends of the Lincoln family. So this is where they would have waited to find out information about her husband, his father. We got some pictures here. We got the wallpaper. There's a little bed, just a little front parlor room. Back in those days, a parlor was also in smaller houses. That's why we see the bed here used as a guest room. So if somebody would come from out of town or visitors, they would set them up in the parlor to sleep. Because at the time, nowadays when we have family come over, typically we'll give up our own bedrooms or our own beds for them to sleep and stay the night, right? Is that usually what we do? Back in that day, it wasn't considered proper because, that was your bed, and hygiene was not the same back then as it was today. People would take a bath back then maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. So hygiene was not the same then as it was now. So let's go to our next. From the house's back parlor, Stanton oversaw the crime investigation. He conducted interrogations of witnesses to the assassination and directed the manhunt for John Wilkes Booth. That's who assassinated the president. So he would have been in the parlor as well, and he would have been, you know, trying to get people to go out and find where Booth went. So now this is the room that Lincoln would have been in here. Doctors tended to the unconscious Lincoln, trying to make him as uncomfortable as possible. More than 40 people came in and out of this room over the course of the night, hoping to hear Lincoln speak some last words. Since a photographer who lived in the house took a photo after Lincoln's body was removed, we know today what it looked like in 1865. And so there's the picture right here that the gentleman took who lived at the house. So we can see exactly what it looked like. It's a black and white photo. So they have switched it around. There's the bed. It is protected. They don't want anyone sitting on it, being around it. And we can see in full color what it looks like. Oops, forgive me. It says President Lincoln died in this room at 7:22 a.m. on April 15th, 1865. There's the bedroom. All right, so outside the Petersons' boarding house, which is this right here, thousands of people crowded onto 10th Street and kept the vigil through the night. Today, 10th Street is a bustling tourist hub with souvenir shops. So this is modern day. This picture is from 2020. So you can see some souvenir shops. You see the Ford Theater. It's a popular tourist destination for folks to visit and pay their respects to when they're in DC. So Lincoln remained unconscious until he died at 7:22 the next morning. After the president's body was removed, boarder Willie Clark returned home and fell asleep on the same bed. So, I mean, it was a boarding house, so he would have just came home and gone right to sleep. Let's take a spin. This would have been the hallway right there, leading back to the bedroom, closet. So let's go to our next. So now we're going to check out the Center for Education and Leadership. So what happened after Lincoln's death and Booth's escape? We're going to explore the aftermath and exhibits in the Ford Theater Center for Education and Leadership. So right there is, and you can see up here the picture of Lincoln. News of the assassination spread over telegraph wires across the United States, allowing some communities to learn of the news immediately, while others did not find out for days. Many people mourned, but some celebrated Lincoln's death. So, you know, here in the North, you know, Ohio was considered a northern state. You know, our state would have been more of one of the ones that were mourning, you know, our eastern states. But people in the South who had just lost to the Confederate War, they would have had a totally different reaction. Theirs would have almost been a reaction at that time of celebration, because they viewed Lincoln as, you know, taking away everything they had ever known, you know, having the war, you know, the Civil War. So, all right. Here's a partial replica of the train car that carried Lincoln's body to Springfield, Illinois on April 19th, 1865. Lincoln's funeral procession wound its way through Washington, reversing the path that Lincoln traveled when he became president. So let's see here. Let's click to follow the funeral train. So after President Lincoln died at the Peterson House at 7:22, the U.S. went into immediate mourning. His remains were removed to the White House in a plain pine coffin. After doctors performed an autopsy, mourners paid their respects at the White House, the Capitol, and in a grand procession around along Pennsylvania Avenue. Finally, on Friday morning, April 21st, Lincoln's remains were taken to the same depot where 4 years earlier, the president-elect had arrived for his inauguration. So this is a photograph of Ford's Theater after the assassination. So this is what it would have looked like, you know, back in that time. Following Lincoln's death at the Peterson House depicted here, his remains were returned to the White House. Doctors J.J. Woodard and E. Curtis recovered the fatal bullet during the autopsy. The question of how to mourn Lincoln arose immediately. Mary Lincoln fought to keep her husband's remains out of the national spotlight, but reluctantly conceded to pleas that a public funeral was in the best interest of the grieving nation. On Tuesday, April 18th, the East Room of the White House opened for mourners to see the caskets of the slain president. So right here, it's just a drawing depicted. You have people coming in to pay their respects to the president at the time. The viewing in the White House continued through the morning of Wednesday, April 19th. So this is a picture of all the people lined up to pay their respects to the president, all the mourners. And it says that 25,000 people lined Pennsylvania Avenue as Lincoln's casket traveled. That was the thing we saw earlier, from the White House to the Capitol. Millions attended religious services nationwide, marking the day. And right there is the president's funeral car wagon. That's what he would have been traveling in. This is some drawings of just some different decorations people would put out. And it proceeded down Pennsylvania Avenue to the U.S. Capitol right here, where mourners filed through on the 8th, 19th, and 20th. A flag flew at half-staff above the Capitol building. So after that, the funeral car left Washington Depot, and it was draped in black crepe. And I know the train went all over the United States, and the president traveled in that. So, you know, wherever it traveled through the U.S., people could pay their respects. We'll go back to, so right here, this is of the funeral path. So it went, we can't see a whole ton of it. Oops. Goodness. But we go into Hamburg, Rochester, New York. So it went from DC around New York and across the country and back. So here are just some memorabilia we have that mourners. These are some tassels from the funeral car. They would pass out lithographs, you know, with information about the president. And President Andrew Johnson, who would have taken his place after the assassination, declared June 1st, 1865 to be a national day of fasting and prayer. So there was a manhunt to find John Wilkes Booth, and he escaped to southern Maryland, stopping at the home of Mary Surratt and Dr. Samuel Mudd before hiding in a swamp and making his way to Virginia. This map shows his escape route. So he would have gone down this way and down to Maryland. After 12 days on the run, the U.S. soldiers caught up with Booth and his co-conspirator David Harold in a tobacco barn at the Garrett Farm in Virginia. Harold surrendered, but Booth refused. This exhibit contains a replica of the barn. So this is what the barn would have looked like where they found John Wilkes Booth. Just a spin. We're going to go to our next stop. The soldiers lit the barn on fire to force him out. Sergeant Boston Corbett, possibly believing Booth was about to shoot his colleagues, fired the fatal shot. So they got Wilkes Booth, who had, you know, unfortunately assassinated the president. Here we learn about the trial of 8 of Booth's co-conspirators. Secretary of War Edwin Stanton ordered a military tribunal rather than a civilian trial because he considered the assassination to be an act of war. So that's what they, in their mind, it was an act of war killing the president. There's a jail cell. So that would have shown the jail where they were imprisoned. 4 conspirators, David Harold, George Adams, Lewis Powell, were given death sentences. They were executed by hanging. And it says this exhibit is devoted to Lincoln's multifaceted legacy, where you can explore Lincoln's impact on popular culture, presidency, and more. Zoom in a little bit. You know, his legacy lives on. He ended slavery. So this is Monuments are put up for all ages. While men and ages pass away, said Augustus St. Gaudens, whose enormous standing Lincoln in Chicago marked a turning point in how Americans saw Lincoln and his legacy. Most early depictions of Lincoln commemorated the great emancipator, but with the post-war betrayal of former slaves' political and economic rights, the reunited nations was eager to move on. It wasn't the abolition of slavery that assured Lincoln's place in history books, but the preservation of the Union. So the war helped to recombine a severed nation. You know, at that time in history, we wanted to be two nations. You know, we had the South and the North, and we wouldn't have the United States that we have today if it wasn't for the Civil War. After more than 100 years of various uses, Ford's Theater reopened in 1968 as a National Historic Site and a working theater. Today, Ford Theater offers theatrical and educational programming that explores Lincoln's enduring legacy. There's our credits. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we learned. Okay. See who was paying attention. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Stop share. I'm going to bring you guys over to me where I can see everyone. Okay, so think back to the letter. According to Julia, who was sitting in the private box with President Lincoln? Who has any idea who was in the box with Lincoln? Okay, so the answer is, according to Julia, there was Senator Harris, Senator Harris, oh boy, I can't talk today. It was Senator Harris's daughter, Major Rathbone, and Mrs. Lincoln. They were all in the box. So when John Wilkes Booth fired the shot, what did he do after he did that to try to get away? Anyone know? All right, Caitlin.
He tried to jump over to the stage.
Yep, he jumped off onto the stage. You are correct. And how did he escape out of the theater? He escaped into a what? He escaped through the back alley where he had a horse waiting. So we got a little bit of time, and I just had a few questions for you because, you know, we're going to have a lot more of these segments, and I got a pen and a paper handy here. I wanted to talk with you guys. Where are some places, if I can find them, for virtual tours that you guys would like to explore in the United States? Where are some places you would like to do some virtual tours? Okay, Caitlin, where are some places?
Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
Okay, Kennedy Space Center. I can see what I can find. Because I want to make sure that I do places that are interesting to you guys. Anybody else have any ideas of places they'd like to go visit? Jessica, hi, where are some places you'd like to go visit?
That place is pretty cool.
Well, thank you. Is there anywhere else you'd like to go visit sometime?
I might ask my mom, but I might come back or something.
Yeah, well, yeah, but for right now, you know, we're doing virtual tours. That's what we've been doing. Where are some places you'd like to go visit if I can find a virtual tour for it?
I don't know where, but
You don't know where. What are some things you're interested in?
I don't know.
You don't know? All right, I'll have to find some good stuff for you.
Okay.
Anybody else have anywhere they'd like to go visit or have some questions? Nope. Okay, so we went through Lincoln and we've done the Smithsonian, we did the Air Force Museum. Now my question is, anyone from yesterday, did you take your paper airplanes you made and try to fly them? Anyone try to fly their airplanes? You did, CJ? Or Caitlin,
Mine went over the TV.
Yeah, it went over by the TV. That's pretty cool. That's good. I'm glad you guys have fun and you were able to do that. All right, so raise your hand if these are some places you would be interested in. I found a few things online. So I found a surfing museum. Would anyone be interested in visiting a surfing museum? Okay, Caitlin, I see you're interested. Okay, Alan, I see you have your hand up. Okay. What about, I think I found a tour where you can go through Hershey Park and we can see chocolate and whatnot being made. Would that be something you guys be interested in? Yeah? I see you, Caitlin. You're excited. Alan, I see your hand up. Okay. All right. Well, that's wonderful, guys. And I really look forward to doing all these fun things with you. So far in these past couple weeks, we've gone a lot of places. What has been y'all's favorite favorite thing we've looked at so far? Where's been your favorite place and out of all the places we've been so far? Caitlin? Oh, hold on. Hold on. It's not letting me unmute you. Oh no.
Yeah.
There you go. What is it,
I
Caitlin?
think the Dayton Museum.
Oh, the Air Force Museum? Okay. Yeah, I really liked that too. It was a lot of fun. Alan, let me see if I can unmute you, honey. I couldn't unmute you yesterday. I still don't think you have your audio on. No, Alan, unfortunately, it's not going to let me unmute you, honey. Okay, so we got Hershey Park. Does anybody know what president Abraham Lincoln was? What number was he? President was Abraham Lincoln. Give you a few extra minutes. Come on, you guys gotta know this. Okay, hold on. I see Jessica. I see your hand up. What president was he?
I think it's $1.
Well, no. I think he's on the $5 bill, but he is on some money.
Oh,
So President Abe Lincoln was our 16th president. And as long as we're talking about presidents, this one should be an easy one. Who was our first president? Anyone know who the first president ever was? He's on our $1 bill. CJ.
George Washington.
George Washington. That is correct. Good job, guys. So we are going to see here. Let's see what else I can find on here. What are your... Okay, so they said it a few times. Where's the Ford Theater at? Does anyone remember where the Ford Theater was that we just explored? So it was in Washington, D.C. All right, guys. Whoops, hold on. We got somebody still in the waiting room. Hello. So like I said, thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. And I want you guys to think of some questions you have, do a little research tonight, tomorrow, whenever you get a chance, and figure out some places you'd like for us to go visit together. And we can have a good time going and visiting these places since we're stuck at home and we can't do anything. All right. So I think maybe next week or the following week, guys, I'm going to try to do some trivia and stuff too. So we'll have some new stuff here next week. But here's Erin, and I'll hope to see you guys soon.
Thank you, Amanda. Always enjoy your segments.
Thank you.
So that concludes another travel, recreation, and leisure segment from Stoneville, Ohio. Thank you, Caitlin and Jess, for giving us some ideas of potential places to go in the future and letting us know what you enjoy. I got my special guest here with me today.
Aw.
This is Gianni, everyone. Say hi. All right. So again, we'll take a short break here. We'll come back at 11 o'clock live from Heath, Ohio, and join our friends over at Together We Grow and learn about some gardening and different things that once the weather breaks here, we can get outside and enjoy. So see everyone here after a short break.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Amanda.